Good afternoon. I just want to welcome you all back to A Courageous Heart. This afternoon, I'm excited to have my guest here. She's an amazing, inspirational woman. She is an emerging writer. She's had an incredible career in the athletic field. She's well-traveled, and she has an awesome story to tell. So I just want to welcome Lindsey Stillwell to the studio this afternoon. And Lindsey, I know that you and I have we've had the opportunity to meet and to get to know each other prior to this. But the part of your life that I'm very curious about is before all that, came about, how was your life? What were you doing? What were your goals?
I think maybe I was had too many goals sometimes. I just, you know what, I remember as a kid, I always wanted to travel. Now that I'm thinking about it, I was obsessed with traveling ever since I was a kid, so I knew it was something I was going to do. And after university, I went and I got my social work degree. And actually, I did really well. It was a really hard program to get into. Very big process to get into it. I had a perfect GPA. I worked very hard. But also at the same time, it was the beginning of my struggles, though in some way, because during that time I had actually had an eating disorder. So I had graduated with this perfect GPA and an eating disorder. Believe it or not, I actually got help and overcame that. But I decided I had some awareness that I wasn't ready to do social work quite yet. There was something in me that knew I wasn't in that place where I was healthy enough to be the kind of social worker I wanted to be. So I never really used the degree in that field in that way. It's really hard to kind of narrow it down because I've had a lot of goals and dreams. So after that, I did work at some camps and some youth centers and used it in that way. But after that, I actually I had a few different jobs, but I ended up working at WestJet. And that installed my travel bug. I traveled more and more and more. And then I decided that I wanted to go and teach English in Korea. Wow. So of course, but this is me. Back then it was very big, though. I was very much like, I'm going to do it. I'm going to go for it. I was very driven, but in some ways just not really balanced. And sometimes I think as much as I've done a lot, it was also running away in some areas, right? So I left my job, went to Korea. I taught English. I made great money there, paid off my student loans, did some more traveling. And then I met my ex-husband there. And I actually had ended up pregnant, so I got married. And we moved to Germany. He's American military. And I had been working, right? I wasn't used to being a stay-at-home mom because I had careers. So when I met him and moved to Germany, all of a sudden I was a dependent. And American military is very different sort of system, a different way of living when you go to other countries and live on base. And so I was adjusting to this new role as a stay-at-home mom in Germany where I didn't know anyone in a small town, right? I had no support. I just had my kid. And looking back now, though, I just didn't realize, but I guess having a kid for the first time and no support was actually really hard. And it just hit a lot of things, I think, that I was struggling with inside that I didn't know until I had a kid.
How old were you?
I was 29 by then. It's not like I was young. But my plans were always work and travel. I never had plans for family, right? Yeah. I had never grown up with dreams of getting married. I'm just going to be brutally honest, or having children, even though I have 4. It's a blessing from God. But this was not something that I felt very comfortable in. So the fitness career, if you're wondering about that, what happened was I was actually really struggling in Germany with depression. And my ex-husband got deployed right away, so all of a sudden, I was literally by myself. And I guess in my ways of handling my depression then, I started running and training for marathons. And then I started getting my fitness certs, and a lot of moms that are military moms really struggle with a lot of isolation and having to give up a lot of things in their life to follow their husbands around. So I found a lot of moms were actually struggling with a lot of depression and, living in a foreign country. And I just started creating programs, and the base would allow me to have these programs actually at their gym. I started creating programs for mothers with kids. And it was the first time they started letting kids in to the gym so that you could work out with your kid. And I created these programs, and they didn't have them before, actually. So it was quite an accomplishment now that I think about it, because I know you've been interested in that. But it was originally because I was actually struggling. And I didn't know how else to deal with my depression at the time. But that's what that came about from. So I actually did marathons in Prague, and I actually even trained people in the military, but I mostly focused on the mothers and the kids. Yeah. And that's how the fitness came.
So I know a little bit about some of our roots of trauma and our roots of these our later years, the goals and the directions that we take. So maybe what was your home life like growing up, and where did you grow up? Here in Manitoba?
I grew up all over Manitoba because my dad is a retired RCMP. So we had to move a lot because RCMPs, you move all the time, right? My home life, I have great, wonderful parents who really did the best with what they could do, who came from their own trauma, right? So, it was, there was a lot of fighting, drinking, and different things like that definitely affected me. And I think that's actually why I even probably, looking back, didn't originally want a family. Because I had all these walls up. And it's hard to talk about it in a way because I love my parents so much. And and they've been such a support in my life and such a part of my sobriety journey. And it's funny how God uses things because, I went so downhill in my addictions and put my parents through so much. But my relationships with my parents now are at a place I never had before. And that's what the Lord does. The relationship with my mom, what we talk about, I never had that before. My relationship with my dad's better. My parents have both grown. My whole family has grown, and this really came about because, I was so far gone, right? And my family actually worked together and really supported me. But we definitely, it was not functional with addictions and codependency. So, and we moved around a lot. So it was difficult because I'd be really popular at one school, and then we'd move in another school and being bullied. So, for example, like junior high was really difficult for me because it's when my mom had left my dad, and I really liked where we were living at the time. I wasn't happy at home. This was when we were in Pinawa, so we were living in Pinawa. And I wasn't happy at home, but I loved school. I loved Pinawa. I loved nature. I loved my friends. And I was never really home, but I loved it there. And I moved to the city with my mom when she left my dad. And, we had to move from a house to a little place because my mom was on her own now. And I didn't really see my dad much. He was still in Pinawa. And me and my dad weren't necessarily extremely close at the time. And when we came here, then I went to school and I started getting bullied. I had actually ran away 2 times from my mom's place. I actually got a little violent with my mom. It's actually hard to talk about. I did. I was not the nicest person, not knowing where this is coming from. I'm only in grade 8. And so I ended up going to live with my aunt and uncle in Nova Scotia. And I finished my grade 9 year there. Moved back to the city, Winnipeg, but this time I moved in with my dad. And I spent high school with my dad. But so my home life, there was brokenness and cycles and, that generational cycles that continue until someone sees it and decides it's time to stop it, So, there are a lot of those going on.
So as you're sharing with me, and as I've gotten to know you and hear, like you said, the things that you are so driven towards, and the things that you dedicate your time and your energy into, it really speaks to your desire to have those things, like you said, removed from your family,
Yeah.
cut off from your family, and healed.
Yes.
So you're repairing these broken links in your
Yes.
chain, and you're helping that next generation. And so even when you're talking about at the military homes and recognizing, that there's single moms there, or there's moms there with dads out, doing his job, and they're at home with their children. You wanted to be there already. You had your social work degree, you had, but you weren't quite ready to jump into that whole piece, but you could see the pieces that you could have an impact. You could, I guess, personally touch
That's
and
very
help,
true.
right?
Yeah.
So that makes a lot of sense to me. It brings a lot of understanding to, I guess the best way to describe what I see sometimes is when I see you, you're like this, you hang on so tight to something, you just won't let it go. And people may not understand what that is, what the reasons are for not letting go, but and God creates in us a purpose in each one of us, and we fulfill that whether we realize it or not. And so it makes a lot of sense to me. Like it kind of adds to the picture. So as you were, you transitioned into your education, and then you focused on your health. So now there's the recognition that you have an eating disorder. You have these things going on, and now you have the balance of the social work degree. You have some education and information in there. So you channeled it into to athletics and a fitness instructor. So where did that take you?
Well, I did that all when my ex-husband was deployed. And I actually, when I got divorced and came back to the city with my daughter, I actually took fitness with me and started my own I was going to work for a gym when I first came here, like Good Life or something, but they were so about selling memberships that I wasn't comfortable. And I wasn't comfortable with the amount of money to charge, so I kind of created my own program where it was also affordable, and I had just like different methods to make it affordable with buddies and different things. And I would just go around the parks. We would do it in the parks. So I started doing just full body movement even without weights, and starting just learning about your body and figuring out different moves that you can do just with benches and all kinds of things. And I was actually really successful. I was doing really well, but I had all this unhealed stuff in me, and I was a single mom, freshly divorced. And, and with fitness, you got to be careful not to burn out, because you're training people. And then, I was still very obsessive back then. So with my drivenness, I was still working out and raising my kid, and just I just started to get too overboard. And I had actually, the reason that ended is because I had burnt out, and my body was telling me no. And I wasn't listening to my body, even though deep down I knew my body was saying no to me, and that I couldn't be pushing at this rate anymore. So I had stopped fitness. I actually went to CDI and did an addictions certificate, which I got great marks in again, top of the class, but I was an addict while I was taking it. Just like the social work degree. Yeah, sure, I can get top marks. I can go on my own strength. But I was, I had an eating disorder. These things were starting to surface, though, which were keeping me from really being, because I looking back as I'm talking to you, it's because I could do these in my own strength. I could go in my own strength, but you don't have that rest. You don't have that peace. It's like you can do it, but you're pushing and you're pressured and you're going, and it's almost like an anxiety, like, you know what I mean? Like I was very fast forward, like I was go, go, go. And when I set my mind on it, I was going to accomplish it. that part's there. But it also came from an unhealthy place in a lot of ways too. My drivenness.
You shared with me an experience. You were talking about Paris and
I did.
traveling. Yeah.
I did a marathon in Prague, but that's why I was in
Yes.
Germany. But I was still able to go back then.
Okay.
It was when I came to Winnipeg and I had my daughter by myself and I left my ex-husband and got into another relationship, who's the biological father of my son right now. And that's when I was running out of steam. I couldn't keep up my fitness business. My body was telling me no. I was so drained. I was exhausted. So what I found, and here I am in in a dysfunctional relationship again, because what do? Relationship jumped all the time. Love addiction, right? Codependency, those cycles. And I was really, really drained. And what I found was I hadn't surrendered yet. No, not at this point. What I found was instead that if I took some of my pills that I was prescribed and I took a little more than normal, that I got some energy to keep going, right? Because I couldn't go on my own strength anymore, but I hadn't surrendered at this point. So then the addiction started slowly. So I was popping my own pills to kind of keep going during all that.
So I just want to
I had to go downhill before I surrendered, girl.
So on that note, I just want to, invite you back to share with us that journey through that place of addiction and your introduction, to the Lord and how those two things connected.
Well, I can share with you, because there's just so many stories, it would take too long, but I'll share with you that it started with my own medication. There was I never had addiction problems before then, just the eating disorders and the relationships, the very unhealthy relationships, which is an addiction.
Okay.
So but not drugs.
Yeah.
Not drugs.
So we will have that discussion on our next visit.
Okay.
I just want to thank you all for watching, and we look forward to Lindsey's next episode, where she'll be taking us through that journey and how she met the Lord and how he brought her out from that fire.